I stood behind the curtain, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought I might actually crack a bone. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just watched that silver SUV crawl, and I mean crawl, past our driveway for the third time that hour. It was broad daylight, a Tuesday afternoon where the neighborhood should have been quiet, but there she was. I could see the silhouette of her head turning, eyes scanning our windows, looking for a sign of life. Looking for me. Here's the thing that will make your skin crawl. This woman hasn't been in a relationship with my husband in 9 years. We aren't talking about a recent flame or a messy divorce. We're talking about a high school breakup that should have been a distant, blurry memory by now. Instead, it's become the shadow that follows us everywhere. How does someone who has a husband and a child of her own become so meticulously obsessed with a man she cheated on nearly a decade ago? And more importantly, how did she find out where we live? They say that when you marry someone, you marry their family. But nobody tells you that sometimes you marry their ghosts too. I'm 25 now, and my husband, let's call him Mark, is 26. We've been together for 7 years, and we're happily married. Our life together should be a dream, but for the last 7 years, it's felt more like we're being studied under a microscope by a woman who refuses to move on. It started so subtly that I almost convinced myself I was being sensitive. When Mark and I first started dating, the honeymoon phase was beautiful, except for one recurring glitch: his family. Every time we sat down for Sunday dinner, every time we went to a birthday party, her name would drop like a heavy stone into the middle of the conversation. It was never a direct comparison, which made it harder to call out. It was always these innocent observations. I'd be helping Mark's mom in the kitchen, and she'd sigh and say, "Oh, thank God you don't use that much salt. Mark's ex used to overseason everything." Or I'd mention a movie I liked, and his sister would pipe up with, "Really? Why do you like that? His ex used to say that movie was pretentious. She always had such a specific eye for film." It was exhausting. It felt like I was constantly auditioning for a role that had already been played, and the judges were still in love with the previous actress. I remember coming home from those dinners feeling drained. I wasn't threatened by her. I knew Mark loved me, and I knew why they had broken up. She had cheated on him, a betrayal that took him a full year of being single to process before he even considered dating me. But being constantly measured against a phantom was starting to wear me down. I finally sat Mark down and told him how uncomfortable it made me. I told him I felt like I was living in her shadow every time we visited his parents. To his credit, Mark didn't hesitate. He's the kind of man who protects his peace, and he wasn't going to let his family ruin ours. He went to them and shut it down. He told them point blank that she was the past, I was the present, and if they couldn't stop bringing her up, we wouldn't be coming around as much. For the most part, they listened. His parents backed off, and his cousins got the hint. But his oldest sister, Sarah, was a different story. Sarah didn't just stop. She doubled down. She had this way of looking at me like I was a temporary replacement, a placeholder until the real star of the family returned. One evening, after Sarah made yet another snide comment about how I dressed compared to the ex, I decided I had reached my limit. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I waited until we were alone, and I told her, as politely as I could manage, that I simply wouldn't be attending any more family events that she hosted. I told her I valued my mental health more than I valued pretending that her behavior was okay. I thought I was setting a healthy boundary. Instead, I had unknowingly pulled the pin on a grenade. Sarah didn't take the news quietly. She went to the entire family, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and told them a complete work of fiction. She told them that I had cornered her, screamed in her face, used every profanity in the book, and told her she was a terrible sister. Her narrative was that I was threatened and insecure because of Mark's ex, and that I was trying to isolate him from his family out of jealousy. The fallout was nuclear. None of it had happened, but Sarah was the golden child, and they believed her without a second thought. Just like that, the family that was supposed to be mine too, went completely dark. They cut Mark off. No phone calls, no birthday texts, no invitations to Christmas. It stayed that way for 2 years. 2 years of silence because I dared to ask not to be compared to a woman Mark hadn't seen since he was 18. It was during those 2 years of isolation that the pieces started to click into place. Mark eventually found out that Sarah and his ex hadn't just been friends, they were inseparable. Even after the cheating, even after the breakup, Sarah had stayed best friends with the woman who broke her brother's heart. Suddenly, it all made sense. The constant comparisons weren't just accidental slips of the tongue. They were a coordinated effort to keep the ex's memory alive in Mark's head. Sarah wasn't just being a difficult sister-in-law. She was a mole. During those 2 years of no contact, Mark and I grew closer than ever. We got engaged, we started planning our future, and for a while, it felt like the drama was finally behind us. We were building a life on our own terms, away from the toxic whispers of people who didn't want us to succeed. But as our wedding date drew closer, the ghost started to manifest in ways that weren't just stories at a dinner table. It started on Instagram. I'm a pretty private person, but I have a public-facing profile for my hobbies. One night, I was scrolling through the list of people who had viewed my stories, and there it was, her name. A name I hadn't thought about in months. She wasn't just looking, she was lurking. Every story I posted, within minutes, she was there. Then she started liking my posts. Old posts. Posts from 3 years ago. It was a leak. A way of letting me know she was digging through the archives of my life. I told Mark, and he just shook his head. "She's married now, right? She has a kid?" he asked. And it was true. She had married the very guy she cheated on Mark with. She had her own life, her own husband, her own nursery to decorate. So why was she spent her Tuesday nights scrolling back to the beginning of my relationship with her ex? I tried to ignore it. I told myself she was just curious. Everyone hate follows an ex's new partner at some point, right? But this didn't feel like curiosity. It felt like surveillance. Then, out of nowhere, the silence from Mark's family broke. 2 weeks before our wedding, the phone started ringing. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a congratulations on the engagement. It was a barrage of phone calls from his parents and Sarah, scolding us for not visiting them and demanding invitations to the wedding. They acted as if the 2 years of silence hadn't happened. They were indignant that we hadn't included them in the planning of a wedding. They had essentially forfeited their right to attend the moment they chose Sarah's lies over Mark's truth. Mark, being the man he is, stood his ground. He told them the wedding was out of town, the guest list was finalized, and there simply wasn't room. We went through with our beautiful, small ceremony without them. It was perfect. It was peaceful. Or so I thought. We were on our honeymoon, finally relaxing, when another message came through. It was an invitation to a family cookout. They said they wanted to apologize. They said they realized they had made a mistake and wanted to celebrate our marriage properly. Against my better judgment, and mostly because I saw how much Mark wanted his family back, I agreed to go. I wanted to believe that people could change. I wanted to believe that the obsession was over. But as soon as we pulled into that driveway, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The apology we received was one of the strangest experiences of my life. They sat us down and told us they had no idea Sarah and the ex had been lying all along. I froze. "What does the ex have to do with the fact that you guys didn't speak to your son for 2 years?" I asked. The answer they gave me made my stomach turn. The words out of their mouths didn't even sound real. They told us that for the entire 2 years they had ignored Mark, they had been in constant, daily contact with his ex-girlfriend. It wasn't just Sarah being friends with her. The whole family had been keeping her in the loop on everything. And the reason they had cut us off? Because the ex and Sarah had constructed an elaborate, years-long smear campaign against me. They claimed the ex had been showing them proof. Fake accounts, doctored screenshots, and manufactured messages to convince them that I was the one harassing her. They were told I was obsessed with her, that I was messaging her daily, starting drama, and making her life a living hell. The family actually believed that I was some kind of digital predator, and Sarah had convinced them that the only way to save Mark from my toxic influence was to cut him off entirely until he eventually realized who I really was and dumped me. I actually felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, a dry, hysterical sound that I couldn't quite suppress. It was so absurd. I hadn't even thought about this woman in years, yet she had been spending her free time creating a fictional version of me to present to my husband's parents. I asked them point blank, "What changed? Why are you telling me this now?" Turns out, there's no honor among thieves. Sarah and the ex had gotten into a massive blow-up fight a few weeks prior. In a fit of rage, Sarah had admitted to the family that the whole thing, the harassment, the screenshots, the fear for the ex's safety, had been an elaborate lie designed to push me out of the family so the ex could move back in. They thought if they isolated Mark long enough, he'd come crawling back to the familiar embrace of his real family and his first love. When the plan failed and we actually got married, the alliance crumbled under the weight of its own failure. I sat there at that picnic table, looking at these people who were supposed to be my family, and I realized I didn't recognize any of them. They were apologizing, sure, but it felt hollow. It felt like they were sorry they got caught. Not sorry they had spent 2 years treating their son like a stranger, based on the word of a woman who cheated on him a decade ago. I stayed quiet, mostly because I didn't have the words, and I tried to just get through the rest of the afternoon for Mark's sake. That's when things took a turn from weird to malicious. One of Mark's cousins, a guy I had always thought was decent enough, came over and offered me a brownie. I hadn't eaten much all day because my stomach was in knots, so I took it. I thanked him, ate it, and went back to nursing my water, trying to blend into the background. About 45 minutes later, the world started to tilt. My vision began to blur at the edges, and a heavy, weighted sensation settled into my limbs. My heart rate accelerated, but not in a way that felt like a panic attack. It felt chemical. It hit me like a freight train. They had given me an edible. They had drugged me at a family cookout without saying a word. I was absolutely fried, my brain struggling to process the most basic thoughts. While I was sitting there, completely vulnerable and unable to form a coherent sentence, that same cousin and his wife moved in like vultures. They didn't ask how I was feeling. They started bombarding me with questions. "So, are you and Mark fighting a lot lately? Does it bother you that he still talks about his ex? Do you ever feel like you're just a second choice? What are your biggest problems at home?" It was a deposition. They were trying to catch me in a state where I couldn't filter my thoughts, hoping I'd spill some tea or admit to some hidden misery they could report back to the ex. They wanted ammunition. They wanted to find a crack in our marriage so they could pry it wide open. Luckily for me, when I get too high, my brain doesn't leak secrets, it just shuts down. I became a statue. I stared at them with wide, vacant eyes, my tongue feeling like a piece of dry carpet in my mouth. I didn't give them a single word, not a nod, not a maybe, nothing. I just sat there in a terrifying, silent fog. Mark noticed my change in demeanor almost immediately. He saw the way his cousin was hovering over me, the predatory look in their eyes, and he saw the state I was in. He rushed over, pulled me aside, and when I finally managed to whisper what had happened, that the food was wrong, he completely lost it. I have never seen Mark that angry. He didn't just leave, he scorched the earth. He told his family they were insane, that they were dangerous, and that he should have known better than to ever trust a single one of them. He told them the cookout wasn't an apology, it was a trap. He carried me to the car, drove us home, and that was the last time we ever spoke to any of them. We blocked every single one of them. No more second chances, no more family obligations. We were done. But even though we cut the physical ties, the digital haunting didn't stop. In fact, it escalated. Mark doesn't use social media at all. He's a ghost online, which I think drives his ex absolutely crazy. Because he's unreachable, she turned all of her attention to me. I use TikTok and Instagram mostly to keep up with my friends who live in different states, and for a while, I thought if I just ignored her, she'd go away. I was wrong. On TikTok, there's a feature where you can see who has viewed your profile. For months, her name was the very first one on the list. Every single day. She wasn't even trying to hide it. It was like she wanted me to know she was watching, like a silent threat. I blocked her, thinking that would be the end of it. The next day, a new account viewed my profile. No followers, no profile picture, just a string of random numbers. I blocked it. 2 days later, another one, then another. It was a game of digital whack-a-mole that I was never going to win. Eventually, I got tired of the constant notifications of new viewers, and I unblocked her main account. I figured if she wanted to spend her life staring at my videos of my dog and my morning coffee, then fine, let her watch. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. One night, after seeing her name pop up for the 100th time, I clicked on her profile. I wanted to see what kind of life she was leading that left her with so much free time to obsess over me. Her likes were public, and as I scrolled through them, the hair on my arms began to stand up. Almost every video she liked followed a very specific, very disturbing theme. Videos about the one that got away. Videos about how to manifest an ex back into your life. Compilations of quotes about hating the new girl, and how she'll never be as good as the first one. She was liking videos about how to stalk people online without getting caught, and videos about being miserable in a marriage, but staying for the kids. But then, it got personal. I had recently started talking on my stories about a specific genre of thriller books I was reading. Suddenly, her likes were full of those exact books. I watched a movie and mentioned a specific scene I loved. 2 days later, she posted a quote from that exact scene. Then came the hair. I've been a ginger my entire life. It's kind of my thing. I posted a video about a new hair care routine I was trying. A week later, I saw she was liking dozens of videos about how to dye your hair ginger, which shades of orange look best on pale skin, and how to maintain red hair. It didn't feel like she was just watching me anymore. It felt like she was studying me. Like she was trying to download my personality, my tastes, and my appearance into her own life. It was like I was looking into a mirror that was trying to steal my reflection. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. I tried to tell myself it was all a coincidence. But deep down, I knew. She wasn't just an ex who couldn't move on. She was someone who had built a shrine to a life she threw away. And she was convinced that if she just watched me closely enough, she could figure out how to take my place. And then, the digital stalking turned into something much more real. There is a specific kind of silence that happens right before your life changes forever. It's that heavy, expectant quiet where everything seems normal, but your instincts are screaming at you that something is fundamentally wrong. I was sitting in my living room, the sun streaming through the windows, just doing something completely mundane. I was recording a voice memo for my best friend, venting about some work stress, laughing at a joke she'd made earlier. I felt safe. I felt like my home was a sanctuary, the one place where Sarah's lies and the ex's digital shadow couldn't reach me. And then I looked out the window. Our house sits back a bit from the road, with a clear view of the street. I saw a silver SUV, the same one I'd seen in her Instagram posts, creeping down the asphalt. It wasn't just driving, it was prowling. The car slowed to a near crawl as it reached our driveway. My heart didn't just drop, it felt like it stopped beating entirely. I watched, paralyzed, as the driver's side window rolled down just an inch or two. I couldn't see her eyes clearly, but I saw the tilt of her head. She was looking right at our front door. I dropped my phone. The voice memo was still recording, capturing the sound of my ragged breathing and the sudden sharp silence of the room. By the time I snapped out of my trance and sprinted toward the front door, the SUV had accelerated. By the time I threw the door open and stepped onto the porch, lungs burning, all I saw were the red taillights disappearing around the corner. I stood there on my own porch, trembling in the afternoon sun, feeling a level of violation I can't even put into words. This wasn't a screen anymore. This wasn't a like on a photo or a profile view. This was a physical intrusion into the only space I had left. This woman, who hadn't spoken a word to my husband in nearly a decade, was now circling our home like a predator. The next day, I convinced myself it was a fluke. Maybe she lived nearby. Maybe she was just lost. But then it happened again. Same time, same slow crawl. And the day after that, it became a routine for her, a daily drive past to remind me that she knew exactly where I slept, where I ate, and where I felt most secure. The question that kept me up at night, staring at the ceiling until 4 a.m, was, how? How did she find us? I am not a careless person. I've dealt with stalking before in my past, an experience that left me with a permanent sense of hypervigilance. I don't post my location in real time. I don't take photos of the front of my house. I don't even have our address listed on any public documents that are easily searchable. I've spent years building a digital fortress around our lives, and yet, she had bypassed all of it. When I finally broke down and showed Mark the footage from our doorbell camera, the look on his face wasn't just fear. It was pure, unadulterated disgust. He watched the silver SUV crawl past our home, and he looked like he wanted to put his fist through the wall. He didn't even have to wonder how it happened. He knew. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice thick with a mix of betrayal and exhaustion. He reminded me of a night years ago, long before the family drama had exploded into a nuclear war. Sarah had come over for dinner once, back when we were still trying to make things work with his family. She had been sweet then, or at least pretending to be. Mark was convinced that Sarah had saved our address in her phone that night, and the moment the plan to break us up failed, she had handed that address over to the ex like a consolation prize. "It's a game to them," Mark said, pacing the living room. "They didn't get to break us apart, so now they just want to make sure we never feel peaceful again." That realization hit me harder than the stalking itself. It wasn't just one obsessed ex-girlfriend. It was a coordinated effort by his own blood to ensure that our marriage was lived in a state of constant anxiety. I started to feel like a zoo animal. I'd be in my kitchen making dinner, and I'd suddenly freeze, wondering if she was out there right now, watching the glow of our lights from the street. I stopped opening the curtains. I stopped sitting on my porch. I felt like a prisoner in a house I was paying for. Think about the sheer commitment that takes. To hold on to a grudge for 9 years. To have a child, a husband, a whole separate life, and still find the time every single day to check the TikTok profile of the woman who replaced you. To drive across town just to stare at a house you'll never be invited into. It's not just not moving on. It's a pathology. It's a refusal to let the past die, even if it means poisoning your own present. The psychological toll was becoming unbearable. I found myself checking her likes again, even though I knew it would only upset me. She was still liking those videos about getting him back and hating the new girl. But now, there were new videos. Videos about being close to what you want, and patience is a virtue. Every time I saw her name, I felt a physical wave of nausea. Mark and I sat down one night, the air in the house feeling thick and suffocating, and we made a choice. It was a choice that felt like both a victory and a defeat. We decided to move, not just to a different apartment, but to build a new house from the ground up. It's an incredibly expensive, stressful, and massive undertaking. We shouldn't have to do this. We love our current home. We've put so much work into it. But the thought of living another year under her gaze was worse than the thought of a mortgage and construction stress. We needed a place that was clean, a place where the soil hadn't been tainted by Sarah's betrayal or the ex's obsession. The process of building has become our secret mission. We aren't telling anyone the location, not even the good cousins, not even the family members who claim to be on our side. Because we've learned the hard way that in Mark's family, information is a currency, and eventually, everyone spends it. But even as we pick out tiles and look at floor plans, I can't shake this feeling of dread. I keep thinking, if she found us once, what's to stop her from finding us again? We are literally changing our entire lives to escape the shadow of a woman who hasn't been relevant since the Obama administration. It feels insane. It feels like she's winning, in a way, because she's forcing us to uproot our lives just to feel a modicum of safety. I look at my hair in the mirror, that ginger color she was so interested in, and I wonder if I should change it. I look at the books on my nightstand and wonder if I should stop posting about them. This is what stalking does to you. It makes you want to erase yourself. It makes you want to become a person who doesn't exist, just so you can stop being a target. I keep asking myself, does this ever actually end? Or am I going to be 60 years old, still looking over my shoulder for a silver SUV? Is she going to be 80 years old, still liking videos about the one that got away while she sits in a nursing home? The longevity of her obsession is what scares me the most. If 9 years hasn't been enough to dull the edge of her fixation, what will? Imagine living in a house where you can't open the blinds. Imagine walking from your kitchen to your bedroom and feeling like you're on a stage, with an invisible audience of one watching your every move. That became my reality. Every time a car slowed down outside, my heart would skip a beat. Every time I got a notification on my phone, I felt a jolt of adrenaline that left me shaky. It's a specialized kind of torture to be stalked by someone who isn't trying to hurt you physically, but who is trying to consume your identity. The ginger hair incident was really the turning point for me. It wasn't just that she was watching my life, she was trying to wear it. I started noticing other things too. I'd post a picture of a specific brand of coffee I liked, and suddenly she'd be posting about how that was her new favorite find. I mentioned a specific hiking trail I enjoyed, a place that was special to Mark and me, and a week later, there she was, posting a selfie at the trailhead with a caption about new beginnings. It felt like she was trying to overwrite my memories with her own. Like if she could just do everything I did, wear what I wore, and go where I went, she could somehow convince the universe, or maybe just herself, that she was the one who belonged in my life. It's what people call single white female behavior, and let me tell you, when you're the one being mirrored, it feels less like a compliment and more like a slow-motion identity theft. During the months we spent planning our new home, Mark and I became like secret agents. We stopped talking about our lives on social media entirely. I went dark. I stopped posting the books I was reading, the movies I was seeing, even what I was eating. I wanted to starve her of information. I wanted to see what would happen to a parasite when the host goes silent. But the silence only seemed to make her more desperate. Because I wasn't posting, she couldn't study me from a distance anymore. That's when the drive-bys increased. It wasn't just once a day anymore. It was twice, sometimes 3 times. My doorbell camera was getting a workout. I'd be at work and my phone would buzz with a motion detected alert. I'd open the app and there would be that silver SUV idling in front of my house for 5 minutes at a time, just sitting there. I started wondering about her husband. I started wondering about her child. Does he know that while he's at work, his wife is parked in front of her ex-boyfriend's house from 10 years ago? Does he know that her likes are a curated museum of obsession? I thought about reaching out to him. I really did. I had the message drafted a dozen times. Hey, your wife is stalking me. Please make it stop. But Mark stopped me. He told me that in a situation this volatile, adding another person into the mix, especially someone who might be just as unstable, or worse, completely unaware, was like throwing gasoline on a fire. She wants a reaction, Mark told me one night as we sat in our darkened living room. The fake accounts, the family lies, the driving past the house, it's all a hook. She wants you to scream. She wants you to call her. She wants to be a part of our story again, even if she's the villain. If you reach out to her husband, you're giving her exactly what she wants. relevance. He was right, of course. But God, it was hard to stay silent. It was hard to feel like she was winning every time I had to duck away from my own window. The move became our light at the end of the tunnel. We found a plot of land that was tucked away, far from the main roads, in a neighborhood where driving past isn't something you just happen to do. You have to have a reason to be there. We worked with the builders to ensure the house was designed with privacy in mind. Tall fences, strategic landscaping, and a security system that would make a bank jealous. But the most important part was the information blackout. We didn't tell Sarah. We didn't tell Mark's parents. We didn't even tell the cousins who had apologized. We realized that even if they weren't in on it anymore, they were still a bridge. All it would take is one slip of the tongue at a family dinner. Oh, Mark and the wife are moving to that new development over on Oak Street. And the haunting would start all over again. It's a lonely way to live, being a ghost to your own family. Mark misses his parents. I know he does. He misses the version of them he thought they were before they chose his ex's lies over his happiness. But he misses his peace more. He told me once that the day we move into the new house and change our phone numbers is the day he finally feels like he can breathe again. But even as we get closer to that day, the fear remains. I find myself looking at the people in the grocery store differently. Is that her? Is she following me here? I see a silver car in a parking lot and my heart rate spikes. The damage this has done to my sense of safety is profound. It's been 7 years of this woman lurking on the sidelines of my life, and I'm starting to realize that for her, this isn't a phase. It's a career. I look at our new house, the one that's still just a frame and some plywood, and I hope it's enough. I hope that when we disappear into those woods, she finally gives up. I hope she looks at her own husband and her own child and realizes that the ghost she's been chasing is just that, a ghost. But what if she doesn't? What if some people are just wired to never let go? What if the win for her isn't getting Mark back, but simply making sure I never feel safe? That's the thought that keeps me up. The idea that someone can be so dedicated to your unhappiness that they'll spend a decade of their own life working toward it. So I'm asking you, has anyone else dealt with this? Have you ever had someone from your partner's past refuse to stay in the past? Someone who wasn't just bitter, but truly, deeply obsessed. How do you make it stop when the person stalking you has nothing to lose? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because right now, I feel like I'm the only one living this thriller movie. And if you've enjoyed hearing our story, if you can call it that, please subscribe. It helps to know that people are listening, that I'm not just screaming into the void while a silver SUV watches from the street. We're moving in 3 weeks. Our new address is a secret. Our lives are going offline. This is our last attempt at a normal life. I just hope, for both our sakes, that the ghost doesn't find the new house. Because if she does, I don't know what's left to do. I don't know how you escape someone who is willing to follow you forever.